and welcome to a first in my series of books called Not Worth Reading. Now, why would I bother mentioning a book or game or what have you that is not worth checking out? Kind of like a lesson to learn in general. Not to say that you have to go and learn the same lesson as I did, but that I did the work for you, and now you know to avoid such things. Now, maybe you already are a Murakami fan, and if you are, this is the book for you. But in general, I think most people haven't heard of Murakami, and I think you're going to want to be cautious to go about learning about Japanese authors. Now, Murakami is perhaps Japan's most famous living author, and his latest book, which came out late last year, was called Killing Commendatore. So, obvious answer is no, I don't recommend this book at all. But I do recommend the author to taste, which is strange because previously I did another book review of the podcast with Jordan and Stefan's Book Talk, and we looked at Men Without Women, which was one of his short story anthology books, which I also did not recommend. But I do recommend for being someone to appreciate his writing and style because he is a very good writer. He's a very good descriptor. So, people who want to learn about Murakami definitely check out his other books, which are much more famous, and just not those two. So, in this regard to Murakami, the reason why I finished the book, I didn't just put it down because I didn't like it, was because his writing was actually very well done. It has excellent prose, and this is a novel, so it's at least 700 pages. At least that's what my smartphone told me. So it's a very slow piece. Everything is put out in detail. A lot of scenes are described, like traveling from A to B. Is like every scene has to have descriptions. For example, cooking meals is a big thing, and some of the nuances of conversations. They take a very long scenes. So the descriptions are usually, if not all, in first-person perspective. That's what he's known for. A lot of the descriptors are surrealistic. The settings are that. They're sort of bizarre. They're sort of odd. And I don't know if it's for everyone, especially in this kind of story. But because of that, they have to be highly descriptive of all the magical and weird elements in them. They're almost philosophical in that regard. So it's not all just long, boring descriptions. There are some good things here, like the psychology associated with visual art. So with visual art, you have a main character who is an artist. He's a portrait painter. And how he paints and why he's good, that captures the portrait or the character he's looking at. He doesn't feel comfortable painting until he actually gets the essence of what that person is, why they are, what their motivations are. It's a very psychological understanding for him. So that was probably the best part of the novel, having a protagonist you actually like for some reason. So that character's understanding of other people, visually at least, was interesting to read about. Another good thing is the story is very simple and mundane, and that's as a result of the slice of life genre. So you can relate very easily to everyone there, as strange as they are, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So you're thinking mundane is boring. Well, mundane is actually easy to understand. And a lot of the events of the story are not completely mundane because they jump into the surreal a lot. So it's colorful when it needs to be, and it's simple, and that's a good thing. There's a lot of it, so you're going to have to be reading a lot of work. The other characters aside from the protagonist are believable, which is good, though a little too strange at times. So there are moments where it's like, okay, that's pushing it. They shouldn't be talking that way to someone they just met, or they're a bit too honest and quirky and outspoken. It's a bit strange at times. So you still want to get to know them because they're so interesting in that regard. And oddly enough, this is also the most Murakami book ever. This is his latest, so he's getting on in years. I think he's around 70 years old. And people have created a bingo card, which they do for a lot of recurring themes and books or series. And It's a bingo card of about, what is it, 10, about 24, 25 elements. I'm just going to list them for you just because they're hilarious. So there's always a mysterious woman. There's an ear fetish, although maybe not an ear fetish, but definitely ears are described in detail in the story. There's a dried up well of some sort. Something vanishes. There's a sense of being followed. There is a series of unexpected phone calls. There is at least one cat, or cats in general. There are old jazz records. There are old opera records. There are old 80s cassettes. This is a big thing in Murakami books. He has a lot of old music, especially jazz. Urban ennui, sort of in Japan. There's some elements there. Supernatural powers. This is very big. It's very strange. There is running, although that's kind of in every book. There's always some sort of locomotion, and human locomotion is the most common. There are a series of secret passageways. There is not really a train station, although there are trains, so it's never really described about. That's the only element in the bingo card that doesn't really sit well there. There are a series of historical flashbacks. There is certainly a precocious teenager. There's a whole bunch of cooking scenes. There is a scene where you're talking to a cat, and the cat talks back. There are certainly parallel worlds. There is definitely weird sex. I can guarantee that. There's a Chip Kidd cover. He's the guy who does most of his book covers. There's Tokyo at night. There are scenes in Tokyo, and they do take place at night. That's true. There are a series of unusual names. There is one faceless villain. I don't really call him a villain. There is a faceless character. And there are vanishing cats, or a vanishing cat. That's true. So it's very, I mean, if you love Murakami, this is what it's for. You get all the things you want out of a Murakami book. But that doesn't make it a good book. Just because it's the thing you like. I mean, that's where we get the phrase, it's good, but it's not my cup of tea, or it's bad, but I like it anyway. It's that kind of experience. So the problems with the book are very similar to the things you like. It is a slice of life story or genre, which means the plot line is not very clear. We know what's going on, and it just sort of happens, and then that's life. So there's no real goal. We know the guy is escaping the breakup with his wife, and then that's kind of it. He settles down, and then that's it. And the rest happens over the course of a year at least. Now, the length of the story is also a problem for me. That because of his style, because there's so many descriptions, I know I said it was possibly a good thing with the mundane nature of the setting. It's just everything is in detail. Traveling becomes a big detail. The car he's driving, how he sits, how he listens to music, how he cooks. And then we get into the supernatural, which is even more hard to wrap your head around. And it just becomes excessive detail. And you end up skipping paragraphs because nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be more colorful language. There is, of course, the supernatural aspect, or the metaphysical, or I don't know what to call it. This is a huge problem in the story because it's never really explained. It's as if the characters are hallucinating, but then the hallucinations are saying, no, you're not hallucinating. This is totally fine. And the one or two characters in the story just accept it. It's just like, oh, this is how life is. This is how existence is. Just random magical things happen, and that's just how it goes. And there are some main plot points in there. There are some entire chapters and settings where it's all just Alice in Wonderland stuff. And one plot line has to connect with another plot line, and the story is literally telling us that the actions of one are affecting the other, but we never actually see that connection. We are never explained or told what that connection is. And it's a really big, almost waste of time on some cases, depending on what context you look at this thing, because it's all one giant metaphor for what actually happened and how these things logically connect. Additionally, there are some rules that are laid down, like how a vampire has to be invited into a room. Well, there's something like that. And it's just done away with. Like, it's actually said, oh, no, this is not a big deal. We can break that rule. Like, oh, okay, then why even have the rule in the first place? If it's just a no big deal. So that's a pretty bad thing in writing to do, create lore and then destroy it. And then you have really, really weird characters. Now, that's, again, a good thing in some regards, but in most cases, because there's so much description and talking about strange stuff, like breasts, for example. Like a 13-year-old girl loves or just can't stop talking about boobs, and to her art teacher who's at least 30 something years old. It's just like the strangest conversation that you would never have with someone. So maybe I mean, it's not impossible. It just sounds so bizarre and funny that it was awkward just to read. And that comes down to having what's called fluff in a story. And I would say, arguably, honestly, 70, 75, 80% of this story could be completely cut. Just completely cut out, and you'd still have the actual frame of the story, the plot would sort of be there, the actual events, the plot points, they would still be present, and you'd have these 4 chapters, and that would be it. You would have a slightly larger novella, or even just a small novella, and you'd be totally fine, and you could expand on those plot points just fine. So he really needed to focus on those plots and the plights of the 2 or 3 characters, and not just have descriptive events for the sake of it, and colorful scenes and verbiage just because. I know that's a style that people enjoy, but you have to connect those words with meaning. They have to mean something. You have to connect things, you have to explain things, you have to have things make some degree of sense. And that means having characters with flaws, and there were characters with flaws, but they had to show development. And it's kind of there's a journey that one of the character takes, but you don't understand it. You don't know what it means. You don't know why he suddenly just wants to talk to his wife or his ex-wife, and why the ending happens the way it does. You just sit there like, what was the point of this 6-month retreat into the mountains where all this supernatural crap took place? Well, what really happened? And the answers surprise you. It's just like, this is dumb. So we had to know the stakes. We had to know what was at risk. And that's what's going to make me want to read your story. Give me a clear understanding of what the hell is going on. And then I might begin to have a sense of meaning from your words. Writing a slice of life genre is very tough. And Murakami is known for that. It's not very easy to do, even for a guy like this who's been doing it for so long. So it's something that you got to learn, you got to pick up, and you got to realize when to stop writing. You really have to say, okay, I got to back away from the keyboard, make sure every word counts, and it's hard to do that when you don't have a plot line or a clear plot line to work with. So thank you for my not worth reading review of Killing Commendatore. It hopefully wasn't too spoiler-filled if you're ever interested. Check out the link in the description for my written review. That definitely has more spoilers there. I'll be posting a link to the Jordan and Stefan podcast review, which should be up on the weekend, depending on whenever he puts that on his YouTube channel. And check out the website associated with that review. I put up a forum for you guys, for anyone who wants to leave longer comments outside of Twitter or YouTube or Facebook. I know someone was asking for it on my previous live stream. So you can log in, create an account there on unabashedreviews.com/community. And I've only set up a few forums. Be sure to tell me what kind of forums you want, and I'll be happy to add those, and we can get a little discussion going. So thanks everyone for paying attention. This is me in Not Worth Reading those things so you don't have to. Have a great day.